When it comes time to mix, whether it's for a client or just a personal project, before I touch a fader, a plugin, anything, I will spend at least 10 to 15 minutes just on session prep, just on organizing the project that's in front of me. Let me show you exactly what this looks like. The project on screen is a song that I wrote back in 2011. This is loud punk rock, plenty of guitars, bombastic drums. I've gone ahead and muted the vocals. Trust me, you don't want to hear my vocals. But this is a perfect example of the typical project I receive and how I approach organizing the session, what I'm listening out for, what I'm looking out for when I'm trying to prepare for the mixing process. Let me give you a quick tour of the session. At the very top, I have multi-track drums that I recorded in the living room of a house I used to live in. So this is an actual drum recording with an actual drummer. Below that, we have guitar tracks, and if I hold shift and select, I believe that's most of the guitar tracks. If we go up to File, down to Export, we can see I've selected 22 tracks as audio files. It seems a little crazy to me. Below that, we have the vocals. And if we open Automation View, my God, I wrote all this crazy detailed automation for each of the vocal tracks. Like, what is the point of any of this? Let's get a quick listen of this performance. It's without the vocals. Again, you're not going to be subjected to my vocals, but you'll hear drums, guitars, bass, etc. You get a sense of what we're doing here. It's punk rock, it's loud, it's bombastic, but we have this crazy session with 100 blue tracks and no icons and no markers. We don't know where we are in the project. So much to sift through, and this is not going to make for an easy mixing experience. Step one is I always save a project alternative on any project I work on. So I go to File, I go down to Project Alternatives, and I create a new alternative. And when the first alternative that I save, I add my initials at the end. So I know this is where I come into the picture. So we're just going to hit OK. Logic will ask, do you want to save these changes to the original alternative? No, I don't want to save. Instead, I'll hold Command and press S to save in this new version. The benefit here is I can always go back in time. I can always go back to that original version. The next immediate step is I organize the session by consolidating tracks into track stacks. Because right now in this project, I have 98 different tracks. Sometimes a project is just going to have a ton of tracks in it. But if I can reduce the amount of tracks I'm looking at any given time, that's a huge win. And I like to organize my track stacks based on instrument groups. So first, the drums. I'll click on the overhead drum track and then hold shift and click on the last drum track to select everything between the first and last track. Now I'm going to hold shift, command and G to create a summing stack. Summing stacks are great because now I can solo and listen to the entire drum group as one. And if I decide I need to process the drums as one, I can. I'll quickly give it a title, drum. Perfect. All right, so we have all of these crazy guitar tracks. Once again, I'll select the first track, hold shift, and go down to the bottom track here. And hold shift, command, and G. And now I have my guitar group. At this point, I've created track stacks for all of the instrument groups that I intend to work with. Let's expand now all of the track stacks. I'm just holding Option and clicking on a closed track stack to open all of them. And now I can kind of take a look within each track stack and just see, are there any other tracks that are just not in use? We do have these quote unquote trash vocals, but because they're muted, that they're not actually part of the project. They're just kind of like a hangover from whatever was recorded into the project. I don't think we're going to need this, and I'm going to power it down. And at this point, I'm going to hide by holding Control and pressing H, the trash group. I'm not convinced I want to use any of these string tracks. So these software instruments, I'm just going to power down. Powering it down will ensure any plugin processing or any sort of processing on those tracks is not going to take up processing power. And Control and H to hide them. You can see take folders and regions that are muted on a region basis. And we just don't need these. Great. At this point, I'm going to start color coding and naming and adjusting icons. So I know exactly what it is I'm looking at here because it's just a sea of blue. All of these titles are way too long in my opinion. There's no icon. There's just nothing here visually to quickly indicate to me what it is that I'm working with. My first step is I like to color all of my track stacks pink, just because it's such a bright color, it's instantly recognizable. Next up, I'm going to color code each individual track. I just pick a color and then work my way down the list, just adding a different color for every track. I'm not one to color code like all the drums one color and all the guitars another color, but I just want to see everything have its own identity in the session. Next up, I'm going to adjust names and add an icon. So you can see here that we have just one icon for all of these audio tracks. And I would prefer to have icons that quickly indicate to me what track I'm working with. So I'm going to right click or hold Control and click, go up to drums. And I also like to give each individual track the shortest name I possibly can. For kick, it's just KCK. This might be like a kick out track, and then we have snare top, snare bottom, rack, and floor. So I'm going to go through all the tracks and adjust the names and icons right now. All right, so now every track has an icon, has a name that at least makes sense to me. It might not make sense to you, but I know right here I have the chorus rhythm guitar on the left-hand side, and these each go in pairs. So the 57 and the E609 were recorded simultaneously for this one guitar track. So they are, in my mind, one guitar. Now that I know what I'm looking at in terms of tracks, I got to start consolidating many of the tracks down to as few tracks as possible if I can, because there's just way too much to sift through. So for example, we'll take a look at the guitars. We have intro guitars, right? And then we have these verse guitars, and it's like, well, look at that. So why not plug these right in here? And these two can go right here. Look at that. There is a bunch of tracks I can just now delete. All right, I've consolidated as many tracks as I could, mostly with the guitars, the vocals, and the strings. And notice, I've cut the track amount in this project in half. You probably are also noticing that, all these different sections of the song are broken up into individual regions, right? We don't have just a region that extends, the full duration of the song or the part. And the reason I do this is because, one, I know exactly where I am in the song in regards to the bass, the guitar, anything that I'm looking at or wanting to work with, but also I'm removing any sort of noise that might be hanging around in that track in between the major performances. Of course, I could use the marquee tool and manually make these adjustments, but you can also use the remove silence function. I just held Control and pressed X. But once set, I can just click OK, and boom. Next up is something that gets overlooked a lot, and that's adding fade-ins, fade-outs, and crossfades to audio regions. Notice I have made a lot of edits to these tracks, to these guitar tracks, to the bass track here. And it's really important anytime you're working with audio regions, not MIDI regions, but audio regions, that we add fade-ins, fade-outs, and crossfades whenever possible. So right here we have fade-in and fade-out, and you can change the fade-out type to a crossfade when you need to. I just add about 5 milliseconds. I don't really agonize over this detail. I just make sure that all of my audio regions have fades. And when it comes to crossfades, the same exact thing. And I would choose either equal power or crossfade. I don't fret too much about this. All I care about is that we have fades, because when you go from silence to sudden audio, you can get clicks and pops. Adding fades eliminates that. So I'm going to go ahead now and add fades to every region and add a crossfade in between every region. But of course, I don't know where I am in the song. And that's where markers come in. So here I have an intro starting at bar 1, and maybe I want to use the cycle range to create a marker for string intro. And then we have full band intro right here. Hold Option and press apostrophe to bring in band intro or rock intro, right? And we'll find out where the verse is. So right at bar 33 is the verse. Now, this last point may be a bit controversial, but often when I receive client projects, there's all this nitty-gritty volume automation written across many of the tracks. In this project, there's crazy automation written for the vocals and the bass guitar. And here's the thing. When I see that, I just turn off the automation or delete the automation entirely. In my opinion, automation should be the last thing you reach for. Like, first things first, use the gain tool in Logic Pro. If you have, let's say, a vocal that's crazy quiet one moment, crazy loud the next, use the gain tool. Just split up the region and adjust the gain on a per region basis to get things more in line. And after that, use compression. Between the gain tool and compression, you'll get 95% of the way there. And then if you need to use automation, like to bump up the vocal a dB or two in the chorus or whatever, yeah, go for it. But this way, you can make level adjustments, fader adjustments without having your faders flying around all over the place, having a mind of their own. And power tip, if you ever need to convert that volume fader automation to another parameter for that track, just hold Command and click on that drop-down automation menu, and you can copy and convert your current volume fader automation to something like the gain plugin or vice versa. But this way you have that ability to keep the automation if you need it, but without having it hamper your mixing experience. Now I can actually start mixing. Everything is exactly where I need it to be. I don't have to fight with anything like where am I in the song or which track am I working with. I can just focus on how to make it sound good instead of pawing through 100 guitar tracks or vocal tracks. This is what I do with every project, whether it's mine or a client's. 10 to 15 minutes up front can save you hours of frustration down the line. I hope this was helpful. I'll talk to you later.